All right, Indiana falls 76-64 to Wisconsin Tuesday night at the Kohl Center. I'm Jack Ankony with Indiana Hoosiers on SI with our post-game reaction video. And just sort of off the bat, Indiana, this is now their sixth loss in the last 7 games. They fall to 14-9 overall, 5-7 in Big Ten play, and they host number 24 Michigan on Saturday at Assembly Hall. We'll get into that game later, but just sort of to recap this one. Obviously, it's Indiana's 21st straight loss at the Kohl Center. Indiana has not won at Wisconsin since 1998, so just been a really really unfavorable road environment for the Hoosiers, and tonight did not feel any different than a lot of the recent losses at Wisconsin, especially last season. It was a little bit lower scoring this year, but sort of the same similar nature game. Um, Indiana dug itself a ginormous hole in this one. They got down 26-4 at the 12:38 mark, which I'll have to do some digging on that, but I'm not sure. That's got to be one of the worst starts to a game in a long time for Indiana, to get down by 22 points so quickly. And let's see, three, four, five, six of those. Wisconsin hit 6 threes in the first about 7.5 minutes there. Which is really unacceptable from Indiana's perspective, I think, because Wisconsin entered the game leading the Big Ten in three-pointers made. So it has to be something that Indiana was mindful of going into it. So it's hard to imagine that they were unprepared or didn't expect Wisconsin to shoot threes. But it clearly didn't have a good plan to stop them from even attempting them. I mean, a lot of those threes were open looks too. So Indiana looked unprepared, but it's hard to believe that you could be unprepared for the team that leads the Big Ten in 3-point shooting. So whether Mike Woodson just wasn't able to get that message across to his team, and they weren't able to translate it onto the court, or for some reason they kind of went into with a different game plan. It's hard to say exactly what the cause was, but this is not a new thing for Indiana under Mike Woodson. They allowed a season high 13 threes against Northwestern a couple weeks ago. I think they've had 9 games with at least 9 3-pointers given up. Wisconsin actually cooled off in the second half. They only finished, or not only, but they finished 12 for 29, which is still really strong at 41.1%. But 9 of those came in the first half. So they actually really cooled off in the second half, went 3 for 13. And after that start, and it was actually a pretty even game. Indiana goes down by 22 early and loses by 12. So they actually outscored Wisconsin by 10 points over the last, I guess, 32 and a half minutes, if you want to look at it optimistically. But at the same time, it never really felt like Indiana threatened to come back and win this game. Um, in the first half, they kind of made a decent run there after they got it down to 12 at halftime. But then in the second half, I think they had 5 turnovers by the under 16 timeout. Wisconsin goes on a 11-4 run to open the second half. They go back up by about 22 points midway through the second half. Indiana makes it respectable, but they score 3 baskets there in the last minute to make the final score look better than it really was. But this was a game that Indiana was really not competitive from the opening jump in terms of, actually winning the game. They, like I mentioned, they end up outscoring Wisconsin by 10 in the last 30 or so minutes, but it was never a game that Indiana really threatened to win. And that's definitely disappointing for Indiana because it had just come off probably its best performance of the season even though it was in a loss at Purdue. I thought that was the best game that Indiana had played all year, given the opponent and given the atmosphere. But tonight it just looked like they came out completely uninspired. Um, whether they didn't have the motivation to come out and play, if they didn't, if they're feeling that the season is slipping away, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of the case. Um, you know, whatever Woodson's defensive approach clearly did not do anything to deter Wisconsin from the 3-point line. I thought in the second half, Indiana actually, I mentioned they didn't give up many threes in the second half, but there were way too many instances of just giving up drives to the basket. I thought Mackenzie Mbako and Luke Goody and Bryson Tucker got beat just sort of on one-on-one drives, way too often. Um, so it was sort of, in the first half, you sort of saw Indiana's deficiencies in terms of guarding the 3-point line. And then in the second half, I thought they had a really tough time stopping them getting to the basket. This goes down as Indiana's third lowest scoring game of the season, so it was not a good performance offensively either. Let's see, Indiana finished the game shooting 40.4% from the field, 7 for 27 from three, which is actually not bad for Indiana in terms of total threes made, but 25.9% is certainly not good. 11 for 15 from the free throw line. After turning the ball over 20 times at Purdue, Indiana was a little bit better in that aspect, 11 tonight. But like I mentioned, it felt like if Indiana had any chance of coming back in this game, it needed a good start to the second half after trailing by 12 at half. And it turned it over 5 times really, really quickly there at the start of the second half, sort of to, shut down any chance in this one. Just to sort of recap some leading scores and stats. Mackenzie Mbaka led Indiana with 15, but it really wasn't a good night for him overall. 5 for 13 from the field, 1 for 7 from three, made all 4 free throws, but he's been really hot and cold this season, and the 15 points look solid for him, but in terms of efficiency and defense, it was not a good night for Mbako. Goody had 11 points, again, 4 for 12 overall, 3 for 9 from three. Rice had 10 points. I thought Bryson Tucker gave Indiana some solid minutes off the bench. He had 9 points, 6 rebounds, picked up a flagrant foul there late in the second half, but played 24 minutes, and he was actually I think he was Indiana's best player in terms of plus minus. He was actually, so he finished +3. Miles Rice was +4, but guys like Anthony Leal -22, Mbako -17, Balo -16. I thought Tucker gave the Hoosiers some nice minutes there, but obviously not enough really to impact the final score. The rebounding was even. Bench points in the paint pretty even. Wisconsin 11-4 in terms of fast break points. Indiana pretty low assist number, just 9. They've actually been pretty solid in that area this year, but not a whole lot going for them there tonight. Balanced effort for Wisconsin. Looks like 4 players in double figures, led by John Tanji with 15 points. John Blackwell also had 8 points, and Kamari McGee had 9. Even got 6 points from Xavier Amos. So really, really kind of spread out scoring for Wisconsin in what has been one of the better offenses in the Big Ten this season. And I think Indiana, if you said, "Oh, you give up 76 to Wisconsin tonight," you'd think you'd have a chance to win this one, given what Wisconsin had been putting up this season. But the combination of Indiana's horrible start to the game and just sort of poor shooting night overall, and just kind of lack of competitiveness from the opening tip, made that difficult. So, like I mentioned at the start, Indiana's now lost 6 of their last 7 games. This season has really gone downhill quickly. I guess you could argue it never really got off to a great start because of the way Indiana performed in the Bahamas. There's sort of just been negativity and not a whole lot of optimism around Indiana this season in general. But Um, this one certainly feels like a lower moment of the season. Um, Indiana still got eight Big Ten games left. I think on the Peacock broadcast they were saying that maybe 7 or 6 of those are quad one opportunities. So if you want to look at it with an optimistic perspective, you could say that the chances are still out there for Indiana. Um, but I guess I would submit that they have not done much to inspire any confidence that this will get turned around, really from a player or coaching standpoint. So not a whole lot of positive to take away from this one. Like I mentioned, Indiana goes back to Assembly Hall Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern against Michigan. That one will have a lot of intrigue, I think, for a couple of reasons with Dusty May, the former, IU student manager, under Bob Knight, now in his first season at Michigan, coaching his first head coaching game at Assembly Hall. I'm sure we'll write about that a lot in the week leading up to the game. But for this one, I think we'll wrap it up there. Indiana loses 76-64 Tuesday at Wisconsin. They fall to 14-9 overall, 5-7 in Big Ten play, and a pretty dismal outlook for the rest of the season. So I've been Jack Ankony with the Indiana Hoosiers on SI post-game reaction video, and we will talk to you Saturday at Assembly Hall after Indiana's game against number 24 Michigan. See you then.